Welcome into a Week 12 Giants Hangout brought to you by Crestron. My name is Madeline Burke, joined as always by Russ Salzberg and Matt Sytak. Week 12, the Giants are back from the bye, but of course, guys, the big news this week is a change at quarterback. Tommy DeVito will be the starter. Drew Lock remains the backup, and Daniel Jones no longer starting for the New York Giants. Brian Daboll said when talking about this earlier this week, Matt, that he wanted to provide a spark down the stretch of the season. Something needed to change. Obviously, the record wasn't what they anticipated. We remember last year when Tommy DeVito came in, a Jersey guy of Italian heritage, very relatable for the fans. What kind of a spark do you think that he can provide for this Giants team?
Well, for starters, at least compared to Drew Lock, he has more familiarity with Brian Daboll's system. I mean, he started 6 games for the Giants last year. Giants went 3-3 in that stretch. Granted, the defense did a lot of the heavy lifting with 12 takeaways, but still, the game against the Commanders last year, I believe it was in Washington, Tommy DeVito threw for 250 yards and 3 touchdowns with no interception. So he is familiar with Brian Daboll's system. And I think another aspect, which is a little similar to Daniel Jones that Drew Lock doesn't do as much, is he can run with the football. He's pretty mobile. I mean, he can move around. In his games last year, he had 4 or more carries in like 6 of the 9 games he appeared in. He had one game where he ran 10 times for 71 yards. I believe it was the Monday night game against the Packers, the big upset win. So he's familiarity and just mobility, which, we obviously seen with Daniel Jones, but that is the sort of spark that I think Brian Daboll believes that Tommy DeVito can bring to the offense. And I agree with him. I mean, Tommy DeVito has shown flashes since last year. We haven't seen him or Drew Lock since training camp, but I think he can, add a little spark to the offense.
I'll agree at one point and disagree. I understand the familiarity about it, but I think the reason, and I really believe this, right now they have 7 games left in the season. And I think what Brian Daboll needs to do, he needs to seek out information. He needs to find out what he's got moving forward. And with Tommy DeVito, listen, Tommy DeVito, as both of you guys have said, Matt, you and Madeline, Tommy DeVito gave them some spark last year. And I think Brian Daboll wants to find out, and he knows it. Listen, the team was bummed out last year. Tommy comes in and provides them a spark. Well, was that a one-trick pony, or can he do it again? And if he comes in and can he do it again, well, then maybe Daboll finds out information moving forward next year. I'm not saying that he's the starting quarterback going into next season. I'm saying he finds out just what Tommy DeVito is made of. And I think one of the other reasons that he is using Tommy DeVito as the starter right now, I think the locker room, not that they don't like Locke, but the locker room likes Tommy DeVito. They responded to him last year, and granted, there are some new faces this year, but he wants to see if Tommy can do it again. And if Tommy can do it again, well, then maybe everybody says to themselves, well, we got to look at this DeVito situation, and what about where he stands moving forward?
Well, and that quarterback room is a pretty tight room.
Yes.
They've talked about how well they get along with one another. Tommy DeVito and Drew Lock have lockers next to one another in the locker room. And Tommy has said before that, he feels like Drew and him are the same person. The only difference being that Drew is married with a child and Tommy is not. But he said that they're so similar in so many ways and they have so much in common. I think that that's beneficial, working together in that quarterback room and having that. And Russ, you mentioned though that there's a lot of questions that need to be answered about this Giants team. Obviously, 2-8 at, in the second half of the season right now isn't what this team expected, isn't what this team wanted going into this year. So they're going to be evaluating what is it that we have and what do we need to change to move that needle to get over the hump and to, instead of losing the close games, get back to winning those close games. And when you look at some of the things that need to be evaluated, Russ, like when you look at some of the areas in which the Giants are honing in, where do you think the focus is in these last 7 games of the season?
I think I'm glad you brought that up. I think it's on everybody. Everybody has to listen. When somebody loses a job, I don't care if it's a player, a coach, anybody, an executive. Everybody needs to look in the mirror. They need to look in the mirror and say, am I part of this? And if I'm not part of what went wrong, I have to be part of what went right. I think offensive line. I think the defensive backs. I think giving up crucial plays, which the three of us have always spoken about for the past 3 weeks, big third down plays, third and longs. I think they have to improve on so many things. The one thing Dable and Shane have said, and that wasn't just coach or GM speak, it's not all on Daniel Jones. Okay. Everybody has a hand into 2-8. Daniel Jones is the quarterback, so the quarterback is the one who gets the praise, most praise. Quarterback's the one who gets the most heat. But now it's up to everybody, quite frankly, Madeline, to improve across the board. I mean, I want to see receivers. I don't want to see as many drop passes as we've seen this year. We know we have good receivers. We want to see great receivers. That's what the Giants fans want to see, great receivers. So I think across the board improvement. Like I say, Daniel was the one who ends up getting the heat on this, but everybody had a hand in it. Now it's up to them to show, okay, let's move forward. And I think Dable also wants to see how all these players respond to Tommy DeVito. Are they going to be part of what do they call it? Are they going to remain part of the problem, or are they going to become part of the solution moving forward?
Yeah, well, for me, first and foremost, I think we could all agree the main focus for these last 7 games is to win some football games. I mean, that is the number one goal. I know there are probably, a lot of fans out there that may not agree with that and may not want that, but the simple fact of the matter is that is what this Giants football team is trying to do in these last 7 weeks. Now, part of it is also you trying to win, but you're also trying to evaluate for next year and the future. And I think that, as Russ brought up before, I do think that played a part in Brian Dable's decision to go to Tommy DeVito over Drew Lock, because Drew Lock is a free agent at the end of the year. They brought him in on a 1-year deal. No one knows what the quarterback situation is going to be for the Giants next year. Could Drew Lock be back? For sure. But there's more to gain by evaluating and seeing what Tommy DeVito can bring to the table and see if he can potentially be in the mix next year for whether it's QB1, whether it's a bridge quarterback, whether it's the backup quarterback. I think there's more of like a potential future for Tommy here. And I think that's what we're going to see a little bit more with the rest of the roster as well. I think these last 7 games is going to be very key to seeing which guys are going to be part of the 2025 team, part of the future. I mean, the game before the bye in Munich was Evan Neal's first start, and he looked pretty good, actually.
Yep.
And he's got 7 more games now to show that one game, wasn't a fluke, he grew throughout the offseason, throughout training camp, sitting on the bench the first 9 weeks of the season. And now he's ready to step in and be that tackle that the Giants drafted him to be. Well, he's got 7 games to prove it. I mean, we've spoken all season about how young the Giants secondary is. Well, now is a chance for those guys to really step up and show, hey, I'm going to be a part of this. I want to be a part of this team. I can be part of the solution, as Russ just said, instead of part of the problem. So you're obviously trying to win these games the last 7 weeks, but I think it's also going to be important to evaluate some of these young players and see who is going to be part of the equation moving forward into 2025.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
No, Matt brought up, DeVito, again, Drew Lock is the backup. Drew Lock was signed to be the backup. He is still the backup, but the Tommy DeVito, and going into this season, you knew Lock was the backup. How did you view Tommy DeVito? I think everybody was viewing Tommy DeVito as, if you will, I'll use the term project. Where does he fit? He gave us something last year. He supplied a spark. So let's see how he's progressing in practice and what we do with him. And now, the way it's worked out, he's going to get another chance to do what he did last year and maybe do it better. And again, as I said, that gives Dable and Shane some information moving forward into next season.
Absolutely. And, when you're evaluating individual players, you also evaluate them as a whole. There's a lot of individual success on this team, but it hasn't translated to team success as of yet. And when you look at that, you think, okay, that's great. If you have a player that's playing fantastic, you need that to also translate to the team, the unit to translate to playing fantastic as well. And it's also kind of, I feel for some of these guys. I mean, you got Dexter Lawrence, who's having a career season in sacks already midway through the season. He's playing like defensive player of the year. And, according to some of the national pundits, he's not even getting recognized for that consideration because of the fact that the team as a whole is not playing up to the level that you would expect. And it's unfortunate to see some of the positives outshined by some of the negatives in terms of the fact the overall win-loss margin. But you get back on the field every Sunday and you're back out there trying to do it every week. And like Matt said, the goal for the rest of this season is to get some wins in these last 7 games, starting, of course, with Sunday when you've got the Bucs coming to town. Tampa Bay is coming to town. It's a 1 o'clock game at MetLife. Baker Mayfield, old familiar face Sterling Shepard, who's reunited with his college quarterback in Baker. He'll be back in the building. The Bucs might have Mike Evans back, which is a big storyline for them because they're also coming off the bye. But prior to the bye, the Bucs had lost 4 straight games. So when you're looking at this game, there's a lot of questions because for Tampa, it's a challenging thing to scout. Okay, are you scouting Tommy DeVito's games from last year? This is a little bit of a different team. And when you make a change at quarterback in that way, Matt, it feels like one of those situations where, all right, the Giants could sneak this one out.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And, you mentioned Tampa Bay sort of having to now game plan for Tommy DeVito. Well, the Bucs, as you mentioned, have lost 4 straight games, but the offense has not been the issue for them. It's really been the defense. Their defense comes into this game bottom 5 in both points and yards allowed. I mean, if you look back at those 4 losses, they've given up 23, 30, 31, and 41 points. So the defense has sort of been what's been, dragging them down. And that's with Mike Evans having missed the last 3 games. That's with Chris Godwin having been out for the last 3 games. And their offense is still rolling and firing as if, those guys hadn't missed a single beat. So this will be, a good opportunity for Tommy to sort of get his feet wet and with a good matchup. I mean, the Buccaneers, the pass defense ranks 30th in the league. And even for Tyrone Tracy in the run game, the Buccaneers rank bottom 5 in rush yards allowed per attempt. So it doesn't matter what metric you look at. This is a great opportunity for the Giants offense, now led by Tommy DeVito, to really, get things going in this first week and start this final stretch of the season strong.
Yeah, I'm glad you also brought up Tyrone Tracy. Like, listen, who'd have thunk it? But Tracy has a chance to be 1,000-yard rusher this year. I mean, think about that. No, a guy coming out of the 5th round has a chance to be 1,000-yard rusher. Our running
last
game,
year, a guy coming out of the 5th round set the rookie receiving record. So sometimes you just got to find the gems in
right?
the draft. I'm talking about Puka Nacua for those who didn't know.
No, but that's exactly the point. You're talking about a situation where who'd have thunk it that it going into our season now, if you wanted to say who is the most valuable rookie in your lineup for the Giants, it would have been hands down Malik Neighbors. And I'm not taking anything away from Malik Neighbors, but Tyrone Tracy has been, wow, nobody saw this coming. Maybe the Giants personnel department did, but I know the 3 of us didn't expect to see what we're seeing out of him. So, I also think when change happens, the one thing about the Giants this season, they played hard. They were in a lot of games. Their problem was they didn't know how to finish games. And that cost Daniel Jones his position. So now it's up to the players.
I would kind of argue that it's not so much about finishing games, which was sometimes the case, but more so consistency. I mean, this is the same team that went to Seattle and beat the Seahawks in Seattle with no pre-snap penalties and the 12s out there being
Right.
loud, and the discipline and the execution we saw in that game week in and week out, it varied. And that's hard because when you don't have consistency and reliability, that creates a little bit of an issue.
Well, you know what they say, good teams know how to win. Know, as you say, finish, be consistent. And the
Yeah.
teams that are 2-8 don't know how to do it. They certainly don't know how to do it with any consistency. And unfortunately, the Giants fall into that. Hopefully, they can get it straightened out. I would think the Giants will come into this game extremely motivated.
Yeah, for sure. And Russ, you said something a minute ago. I just want to touch on the saying, good teams know how to win. I think that is why it is so important for the Giants in these last 7 games to go out there and put their best football out there and actually win a couple of games. I know that might, that would hurt the draft position, but you cannot worry about that. You worry about the draft when the season is over. This team needs to start, building and establishing the winning culture. I mean, we just talked about Tyrone Tracy. You brought up Malik Neighbors. The Giants rookie class, their draft picks look like this could be like a game-changing draft.
Yeah.
5 guys already that have been key contributors
Very
already.
much so. Yeah.
And they're a couple, and like Elijah Chapman, even as an undrafted free agent, has shown flashes. I mean, Darius Muasau has the only interception for the Giants this year. This rookie class has the makings of being one of those like game-changing, future-altering draft classes. And these guys need to start establishing that winning culture. I mean, I brought this up on, Big Blue Kickoff Live previously, but the Detroit Lions a couple of years ago were one of the worst teams in the league. And they were in a similar record situation that the Giants are now. I believe it was 2 or 3 years ago. And they won, I think, the last 8 games of the season. And they fell short of the playoffs, but that led them into last year where they were one of the best teams in the NFL. And that carried over again to this year where they've now been one of the best teams in the NFL for 2 straight seasons. And it was that winning streak that they did on a season when they were, I believe they were like 1-8. And then they ended the season 9-8.
Yeah.
That momentum carried them over into 2023, which has again carried them over into this year where they're the Super Bowl favorite right now. So it is so key, despite potentially hurting draft position, throw that out the window. Right now, the most important thing is teaching these young players how to win football games.
Well, and you mentioned
1,000%.
Lions being the Super Bowl favorite. They're the Super Bowl favorite for the first time in franchise history. And like you said, kind of creating a culture or learning how to get used to winning and saying winning is the norm. Because after, years of not having some success, nobody likes to lose. But if you start getting used to it, that can create some complacency. It's like, no, we want to get used to winning. We want that to be the standard and the baseline.
Well, listen, an old saying in sports, winning builds confidence, losing goes in the opposite direction. They need to start building confidence as a group moving forward. And, they can go into a game feeling confident that they're going to turn it around, but going into a game 8-2 as opposed to 2-8 is a big difference with how you're feeling. And Matt, you said a mouthful there because as long as I've been in this business, it's been a long time, I've never bought into this garbage about tanking and worrying about your draft pick. If you're a real athlete, you step on that field every day expecting and wanting to win. And that's what the Giants need to do for every game here moving forward. Step on the field wanting and expecting to win. Whether that happens, that remains to be seen.
Absolutely. And that starts Sunday when they host the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 1 p.m. kickoff. If you're going to be at MetLife, let us know and have fun out there at the game. It's going to be a lovely day for some football. Tommy DeVito, QB1, Sterling Shepard back in the building. Giants, Bucs. We'll see if they can get the ship right for this home stretch of the season. But that's a wrap for Week 12. Giants Hangout brought to you by Crestron. For Matt Sitek and Russ Salzberg, I'm Madeline Burke. We'll see you next week.